room so we can continue the meeting.
Quite a lot.
I know that. I know that.
You can continue the celebration out in the hall. Thank you very much again. Item number 5, to consider and act upon the minutes from the regular meeting of December 2nd, 2015. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion.
A second?
I'll second it.
All right, any changes or edits, amendments? Okay?
That was okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item, just to confirm for anybody watching, item number 3 and item number 6 were put on our menu, or agenda, sorry, in order to create a cover/excuse to get our 2 award winners here. There are no backup to those 2 items. So we'll move on to item number 7. To hear, consider, and act upon the following appointments. And I guess, because of the number of different boards, we'll take these one at a time, if that's okay.
I would be okay if you wanted to put them all together. Is that you?
Well, let's,
Whatever.
get through 2 quick. I think we're still waiting for the superintendent, so we might as well
Okay,
take them one at a
all
time. To hear, consider, and act upon the following appointments.
Yes.
1. Oh, all right. Do you want to take them all at once then?
Yeah.
All right. May I have a motion to accept appointments A through J, and with your permission, I'll just read off the names. For the Affordable Housing Committee, Jerry Stallman. For the Fire Commission, Dorothea Brennan. For Flood and Erosion Control Board, Steve Stearns. For the Harbor Management Commission, James Harmon and Norman Marsilius. For the Historic District Commission, Margaret B. Kufferman. For the Human Services Commission, Bruce F. Carter. For the Parks and Rec Commission, Scott Walker. For the Shellfish Commission, Allison Savona and John Short. Tree Warden, Jeff Minder. And the Water Pollution Control Authority, Ronald Drew and Mark Elliotson. So we had the motion and a second, correct?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay, good. Any further discussion? Any comments from the body? All right, back, thank you. Any further comments from the board?
No.
Wish them best of luck
Yeah.
on their boards.
Thank
I
you
just
for
want to
serving.
mention, these are reappointments, so these folks have all served on their respective boards. So they're familiar to the Board of Selectmen, they're familiar to the public, and they're certainly familiar to the commissions on which they serve. We want to thank them for their time and commitment for signing up again to help serve our town. I think it's obvious from just the sheer number, the amount our town counts on volunteers to help on various boards and commissions and provide the leadership and to a real extent the quality of life in our town. So thank you all for that. Are we ready to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations to all of you. Thank you. Next up, item 8. These are appointments. 2, the Board of Assessment Appeals. Barbara Herman, Democrat, 761 Merwins Lane, for a term of 11/15 to 11/19. And this is to fill a vacancy as a result of an under-endorsement during party nominations. May I have a motion to accept?
I'll make that.
I'll
All right.
second it.
Okay, good. We've got a first and a second. Any comments or questions from the board?
No.
All right. Any comments from the public? All right. Again, I want to thank Ms. Herman for volunteering again. There was as I gather, a bit of a technical mix-up on the nominations because she had submitted her name before. But I thank her very much for coming back again to help us out here. Any further comments? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Ms. Herman. Next up for the FairTV Commission. This requires a unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen and, in addition, RTM approval. Catherine L. Braun, Republican, 245 Sunny Ridge Avenue, for a term of 7/15 to 7/16. This is to fill a vacancy for Alexis Harrison, who resigned. May I have a motion to accept?
Motion.
Second?
Yep.
All right. And I think I forwarded on an email sent earlier today to both of you with Catherine, letting us know that she was unable to attend tonight.
Yep.
I just want to confirm that you are comfortable moving ahead with this.
I am. I spoke to Catherine today. I let her know that it wasn't a problem. She's actually out of state right now. In an interest of getting the RTM to also approve this, I'm comfortable voting on it.
Okay. Madam
Yeah, I
Clerk?
agree. I spoke to her, and I know she's already been involved at the RTM level,
Okay.
so I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, Catherine is also somebody who's been very involved and is familiar with this board as well as our RTM group, so I'm comfortable moving forward with that too. Any comments from the public? Back to the board. We're ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that meets the first criteria, that it's unanimous by the Board of Selectmen. Next up, in other appointments, this is for information only. I want to thank our colleague, Mr. Timniak, for accepting the position as the Board of Selectmen representation on the WPCA. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Is next up, item 10 is to hear a report from the superintendent of schools on the Holland Hill project timeline. Dr. Title.
Hi. We have a whole team here. Sorry. I think actually I'm going to have the Board of Ed chair start, and then I'll do some of the detail work.
Okay.
A couple of, I'll say, headline
If you
issues
could
to think about.
Introduce yourself.
Philip Dwyer, Chairman of the Board of Education, at 2607
Newly
Congress
reelected
Street.
chair, so you're in your rookie year for the second time,
Rookie year for the second time,
third time.
fourth time, but who's counting? Couple of headline issues on the Holland Hill project. Back in 2010-11, when the Board of Education, it was a different set of members, but the Board of Education put together their first long-range facilities plan and ordered the major facilities especially that needed to be done in a certain order, and then chipped away at them one by one by one. And so if you use the phrase, Holland Hill is the next school in that order to come up for a major renovation because of the needs of the school, both because of increased enrollment, but also just the condition of the school. And this year, last June, we looked at the long-range facilities plan again and updated it, revised it, and on a unanimous vote, approved it. The discussion around the major facilities held true, and so Holland Hill remained a priority school, if you will, established by two different boards of education. There was some discussion on what should the size of the school be, so that would be point 2. Holland Hill serves one of our more densely populated neighborhoods, and we looked at whether if instead of a traditional 504 school, that we could shave it back a classroom or 2. And on reflection, we said that's probably not wise planning. This is a renovation that will last well beyond the next 10-year cycle of enrollment projections. And we have to plan for what the 20-year and the 30-year cycle will be. And there's no doubt in our minds that that building deserves to be laid out as a 504 school, which is essentially planning for 24 classrooms with an average class size of 21. 21 times 24 is 504. We are, of course, also addressing some of the program deficiencies. That's the third thing I'd point out. Some of the program deficiencies within the building. So the project is a combination of allowing for increased enrollment that has occurred and is likely to continue to occur, as well as the facility deficiencies that exist. The school is currently, with the classrooms that are inside the brick and mortar, considered a 315 enrollment school because there are 20 classrooms within the building, 21 to 315, and there are about 400 students there now. So it is overloaded, and some of the specialty classroom spaces have had to give way to the general classroom spaces. So those are the three major things I think I'd point out to you, and as always, Dr. Title is going to go through some of the more detailed parts of it.
Dr. Title, if I might, just to position this a little bit, just especially for anybody watching from home, we are not approving the Holland Hill project here. This is not a voting item. The project will be coming before this board shortly, but Dr. Tuttle stepped me through the project timeline that he's proposing, we thought it would be a good idea to update the board so that when the project does come before us, we were aware of all this and had a little more time to deal with this. So we're not approving the project. However, we are getting an update on the proposed schedule, so this board is better informed in order to make our decisions going forward. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Good. I'm glad you made that clarification. So one of the issues that we've struggled with the whole time I've been here with major projects, and it probably predates me, has been trying to get the estimates as close as possible to the actual number when you go build a project. And there's been a lot of frustration, particularly in the last few years, particularly with the new way we have to remediate hazardous materials, PCBs in particular, that they discovered later in the process that caused these projects to go way overboard. And so what we wanted to do was to try to come up with a way that would move the project forward on the same timetable as we would normally do a project. It's still not speedy, as you'll see on this. It still takes 3 to 4 years to get this done. But we didn't want to lose time while we were figuring out the price of the project. At the same time, we wanted to make enough headway so when the full project funding comes forward, the building committee and everybody feels much more confident that we're a lot closer to the real number. Instead of having to come up with a number, get halfway through a project, find out we're over, come back, and the building committee has to come back and ask for more, and then there's a lot of what went wrong here. So that's what this timeline does. It asks for funding in 2 stages. The big picture on this is that in stage 1, we have 2 needs. First of all, even with 3 portables on the campus, we have music with no classroom floating around the building. We have another classroom with 4 or 5 teachers all sharing. We desperately need temporary space there until this project is completed. We just can't live with the current configuration. So part of the funding request that's going to come to you is to put some temporary classrooms, 2 temporary classrooms up for next fall on a lease basis so they can disappear into thin air when the project is completed. So that's part of the timeline, and part of the reason we're bringing this forward now is because we're looking for the approval so that we can get that money in place for the temporary classroom so we have enough time to get the portables up for September of 16. So we have an immediate problem there. And the second half of the funding request is for architect, engineering, and hazardous materials work that will take us about 3/4 of the way through the design process. And will take about a year. And that in about a year from the time this money's approved, so a year from March, let's say, a building committee would come back, having gotten, say, 3/4 of the way through design, with a very firm number about what this will cost. And at that point, we'd go back to all the boards for the remainder of the project. I should point out that the money that's being paid up front, it's our belief in talking to the school facilities unit at the state, they're not called that anymore, but whatever their real name is, that the money we would spend on this upfront money, this down payment, is reimbursable, so we would get our 25% or 24%, whatever the net turns out to be on that. And it's money we would spend anyways on the project. You're going to design the school. You're either going to pay for it now or you're going to pay for it at another time. So we're not spending money now that at some point will be duplicated later. And the one thing that would, to really help this move along and stay on the timetable, is that there's a more active and quicker role for the Board of Selectmen than normal on this. So let me just walk through a couple points there. On this timeline, the Board of Education has gotten its first reading on educational specifications. That should be done by the January 12th meeting. That'll be on for action. Once that's all set, then we can turn those head specs over to a building committee and say, go hire an architect, go hire somebody to design what has to happen there. We have to get going on the temporary classroom design. The Board of Education is also going to approve, scheduled to approve, I don't want to be too presumptuous, this initial funding request. It's about $1.2 million. That includes the portables and this design piece. Once they do that, then we would come to you first for that chunk of the money. And we would like to have the Board of Selectmen move quickly, if not on January 26th, I think it is, or 27th, it's that.
27th, I think.
27th, that second meeting, right, in January. We really would like the Selectmen to get the process going of a building committee as rapidly as possible. That's often something that slows these projects down. We're proposing that it be a smaller building committee for this initial phase, and that it be people who can work, maybe during the day or at least in the afternoon, so they can move faster. Instead of meeting once a month at night for 2 hours and then canceling meetings because people are out of town, that really slows it down. And if you slow the project down, the costs go up. So I'm asking, not just me, but I think everybody in Holland Hill to ask, that the more quickly you can move on that first page, in the middle where it says January of 16, establish a building committee, a charge, initial building committee members, the 3 resolutions, that's typically doesn't happen that quickly. So the sooner the better on that. Now, the building committee is up to you guys and the RTM. Who's on it is not our business, but we just need a committee that can really work rapidly with an architect. Then from there, if we follow the bouncing ball, if everything goes well and you approve it, then we actually would be in place to have the full funding for the design and the temporary classrooms by the RTM meeting on February 29th, I believe is the date. That allows us to file for state reimbursement. It allows the building committee to hire an architect and be off to the races on design. It will take about a year from there to get to the point where a building committee then can come back to you and say, we think we've got a solid number. So it's going to go through conceptual design, estimating that. They're going to go through design development and estimating that. And they're going to go through the hazardous materials survey. And they're going to go through what's called design development and estimating that. There's only one stage left after that, and that's construction documents. So that all takes place on pages 2 and 3, where in March of 2017, building committee seeks full project funding. So it's a good year, but that's what it would take anyways. And it could be done faster, conceivably. It all depends on how the architect, it's a lot of work.
That's what I want to hear,
Yeah.
faster.
It can be done faster. We're trying to be realistic about this. The worst thing we can do is put out a schedule and then be behind right away. And if the building committee hits that date, then basically, by May of 2017, if all goes well, the full project is funded, and we meet the June 30th deadline with the state for the reimbursement, and then off we go, and in 18 and 19, the project gets built. So the new approach here, is this extra work on the front end with the design work and the hazardous materials work to minimize the chances for surprises. You still have contingencies in the project. And if we in Fairfield can move our process along, we won't lose any ground on this. This is actually a fairly good timeline for projects, building projects. You've been around long enough to see how long it could take some of these. Right? Riverfield took multiple years beyond this. Stratfield, I mean, they take a long time. But anyway, that's the overview. And so I think I'll stop. I've prattled on long enough here. And I think there's a lot of advantages to this. In the last page, we tried to do a little pro and con on it. And I think at this point, I'll just open it up to questions and discussion.
One question, if I might, just on this timeline, when would the project go out to bid?
Let me find you the right page. November of 2017. On page 4. It's the second to last item.
Gotcha.
Because what you have to do is, you finish construction documents, then you go to the state. They have to review them. That takes a fair amount of time. They're not overstaffed there. And then they have to issue approval to bid. And then you bid. You can't go out to bid before the state tells you to, or you risk your reimbursement. Just their process.
Any questions from the board?
I have a couple. When would the portable classrooms be put in?
Over the summer.
Over the summer.
This coming summer of 16. So the goal would be, obviously, to have them in for first day of school of 16. We're talking about two temporary classrooms. They're not really, we call them portables, but they're not portable. I guess they sort of are, but the temporary classrooms would go in, so that would give us 5 on the site. And they'd be fenced in, and they would be fine for what they have to do, but we wouldn't purchase them, because we don't want them.
Would that solve, is 2 enough to solve the problem of the
Yeah, that was-
overcrowding and the music?
It solves it temporarily. It doesn't obviously completely solve all the problems, because what we're going to eventually do with that project is more substantial than that, but it would bring immediate relief to the issues that we have there right now. And the other thing we have to be careful about, and the land there is tricky, is if you load too many portables onto the site, then you can have a problem with trying to build.
Right.
Because where you want to build the addition, you're likely to have portables there. So this is actually an unusual step for Fairfield in a building project. Typically, we say to the school, you got to live with this. This is the price you pay for it. But the situation there is such that I really feel it's in our interest to get 2 on there immediately. It's not ideal, but it gives everyone a classroom. The music teacher gets off the cart and not doing music on wherever he can find a place. Opens up 1 more classroom. We've got a couple classes, that could tip over to another classroom. But it does provide a lot of relief for, really, for at least a couple of years, we would need to do that.
Lori, any questions?
Well, just to, I mean, I like hearing that you're trying to make it move along quicker. Because the first
Yes.
thing I saw, when I look at it, I'm like, wait, how many years?
I know. That's the nature of the beast.
And it sounds, too, it's smart, like, learning from the previous projects.
Mhm.
And whatever we can take from that to
Yeah.
shave time off, I think is going to be very valuable.
Yeah, I mean, the way we did a mock-up of, if we did this sort of the way we did, a couple previous projects, we would hire an architect at Board of Ed expense, would not be reimbursable. They would do a conceptual design, a very early stage design. We would ask for full project funding by June 30th to hit the state timelines for this. And then you would proceed from there. When we mocked up that timeline, it was no faster than this. It was the same length of time, but you lose all that certainty of waiting to get these, hazardous materials survey and the better design. And the other thing that happens, and one thing we learned from a previous project that I won't name, is that this locks in the building committee to the same architect throughout the project. Okay, so this is what we had in some previous projects was one architect would do the conceptual design, and then a building committee would get formed. Then the building committee would interview and hire, say, a different architect. And then the architect would come in and say, that stuff that architect did, that's all well and good, but I'm going to put my stamp on it. And often that causes problems. The project where the building committee stayed with the same architect through the process came in on budget. So this locks the building committee into the same architect throughout. You'd hire someone not just to do the design work, but then they'd also be doing the construction documents and overseeing the project. There's also a role in here for a owner's rep. I think there's been some discussion about maybe the town having an owner's rep. And if the town had an owner's rep, then the building committee would not hire their own owner's rep. And I don't know whether that discussion has advanced, but certainly that would work for us in this timeline.
Yeah, that discussion is underway, but hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay,
so.
but just saying that under here, when you see owner's rep, that may or may not be the choice of the building committee, depending on what direction you guys, or the town decides to move in.
All right. Chris, did
Yeah,
you?
I did. Are we currently leasing any temporary classrooms in the town, Dr. Soto?
We're not leasing any. We are renting 2 educational facilities in full. So we have leases for the Walter Fitzgerald campus, and we have a lease for the maintenance building, and we have one educational facility, the Walter Fitzgerald campus, the maintenance building, and of course where our offices are is a condo arrangement. But there's no leased portables out there.
So this would be the first we're doing of this?
That would be the first of a lease. Maybe we've done it way long ago, but No, do we have any?
We
We've done it.
We leased the Osborne temporary gym and previously.
Oh, that's right, the Osborne temporary gym was a lease, that's correct. When we had the PCBs at Osborne Hill, I had to close the gym, we leased that. And that was a good move because it's gone.
Right.
It didn't stay.
Right.
Portables have a way of hanging around. And elimination of portables is a chief objective of the long-range facilities plan. As Tom Cullen will tell you, 15 years ago, there were 61 portables in this town, and now we're down to, maybe a dozen, so.
Are there any other schools which would benefit by a lease of a temporary classroom? I know the overcrowding situation at Holland Hill has, filled my email box for many months.
Yes.
And I haven't seen many other emails at that
No.
pace, so I'm just wondering if there's,
No, we're in good shape otherwise. I mean, the schools that have the portables at them, they're all being used, but they're ones that we own outright. So we have them still at Mill Hill, we have them, and we have one at Jennings, we have one at Sherman, but,
And over time, with some of the more substantial ones, we've actually moved them from one campus to another.
right. We did investigate, somebody asked about, could we move the ones from Riverfield over? And we actually had somebody come out and look at them, and they took one look at them and said, they're gonna fall apart on the truck. Don't even bother. So in fact, those are being demolished because Riverfield is occupied now, thankfully. So we own the rest of them. Well, we also have one, our bus lot of office down by the dump. That's a portable that we own.
Yep, that one was moved from someplace.
Yes, yes. And in the long-range facilities plan, Tom's done a good job of this. In the long-range facilities plan, we list every portable and what the age of it was and like where it came from. So we have a whole inventory of these things, but fortunately it's shrinking.
that's it, thanks.
Okay.
Just to kind of help us picture what we're accomplishing at each step.
Okay.
The current capacity of Holland Hill is how much?
It's currently, without the portables, it could house 315. Because it has 3 portables, you can add 63 to that number, so 378.
78. And when we add the temporary portals that we're talking about.
Right,
as part
add
of this
another
project.
42 to that.
Okay,
And that will
so
get us
that's-
enough to
that's-
handle the existing 405 that's in there.
Number 42, that gets us to 420?
Yeah.
All right. And how many students do we currently have at Holland Hill?
Say, 4,
408.
408.
Each day we get a new student.
Wow.
anywhere from 405 to 410, depending on the week that we measure it. Thank you, Laura. That's Laura Cortella, who's calling out as the principal at Holland Hill, by the way. You'll be seeing a lot of her and some other folks.
All right. And we want to take that number up from 420 up to 504.
That's the plan.
But we've got, I'm sorry again, the number we currently have in school at Holland Hill, if you need to narrow it down to today, that'd be okay. I'm just trying to get an approximate number. Where are we today?
408? 408.
So
It's
when
the
we-
official number.
What I was trying to get to is, once we add the temporary portables,
Yes.
the new temporary portables, the
Yes.
old temporary portables, we'll basically be, have the capacity we need for the current population.
And we'll have enough to get them all in classrooms. That does not solve a lot of the other problems. With the core facilities are not big enough to handle that size. Right? So our lunchroom, our APR, gym, and so forth, they're not sized for 420. So part of what, yes, you can get them in the classrooms, but still, it's going to be a very tight squeeze into the common areas.
And without trying to get into the details of the
Yeah.
project, the goal of this project is to right-size the school for 504 students, including the cafeteria and the gym / all-purpose /
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. That's exactly right. And other pieces that will,
Yeah, I didn't mean to limit it to that, but
Yeah.
it will then be able to accommodate what the education specs say
Right.
of 504 student population school needs, even if it were built right from
Right.
start. So we will have the appropriate cafeteria size and everything else we need.
that's correct.
Okay.
And we will, once the board approves the ed specs, along with the funding request, when we send the funding request through, we'll send you the ed specs with that, and so you can see exactly what would be included in the project. That's what the ed specs are for.
Now, at what point on this timeline would we in fact do the testing for PCBs and that type of thing?
That is over on page 3, October, it's a window, October of 16 through February of 17.
Yeah, I'm not trying to tie you down to a specific date, I'm just trying to give a
That's the
flavor
range.
for
So on, yeah, if you,
where the steps are here and
Yes.
qualitatively, if you will, at what point in time we'll know this in terms of what steps come up
Sure.
after that. So at some point, we will know what the PCB
correct.
status is.
Well, we'll know as much as is humanly possible without actually taking down a wall to find out, but we'll be real close.
Speaking as a former student, I'm hoping you don't find any.
Correct.
But,
We don't expect that to be a huge problem there based on some testing we had done, but you just don't know. We also weren't expecting to find it at Riverfield, and we did. Hence, there's a beautiful new gym there.
Now, one of the holdups at Riverfield was the ongoing negotiation, not only with State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, but the federal EPA.
Yeah.
Now, this is not in a flood zone, so we shouldn't, was what drove that the fact that Riverfield was in a flood zone, or what drove that the fact that we found PCBs in the insulation in the gym?
The PCBs, now the flood zone has nothing to do with it. It was the
Well-
PCBs were the main driver of that problem. And I think if you find them in certain quantities, it kicks in different agencies. I'll turn to my partners out here to,
Yeah, if I could,
that
let
sound
me
about
clarify,
right?
just because I thought part of the Riverfield issue was the PCBs in the flood zone, which caused us to get into a discussion with the federal EPA.
this is Sal Morabito, the manager of facilities and other things.
And I thought
And
we
other
had
things. A
several
lot of
layers.
other things, yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of balls in the air for Riverfield, but they were separate and distinct problems. It wasn't
Okay.
PCBs in a flood zone. There was an issue with the flood zone, which was a state issue that we had to solve. I actually forget the name of the office that we had to solve it with. The EPA issue was that we had to get a timeline for the concealed PCBs that we found in the gymnasium, and it became an issue that they wanted them gone, but they would have given us a time frame to do it, up to 10 years, and that was the whole analysis that the building committee went into. Was it cheaper to do it now? Was it in the best interest of the town to do it now or later? And they made their pitch, and all the boards agreed that it made sense to take care of that issue right now.
So that
So
was
nothing to do with the flood zone.
They weren't connected, per se.
Interesting.
There were simultaneous timeline problems that we were solving, but the bigger problem was the PCB as opposed to the flood.
And again, it's not, just so everybody's clear, it's not a flood zone per se, but it's the 500-year.
It's a
flood zone.
500,
So
yeah,
not-
it's a really,
Not that anybody should expect
esoteric
Riverfield's going to
kind
flood
of-
anytime soon.
no, not at all, not at all. And that was designed, it was designed out, and that's why it's not a problem, and we got the approval from the state agencies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One reason why we're a little more optimistic on the PCBs is the most frequent place you find PCBs, not the only place, is windows. And the windows at Holland Hill are relatively new, they're really not part of this project. So that's a good thing in the grand scheme of things. That, you're right, you can get delayed because EPA Region 1 administrator decides we're going to sit on the paperwork for 2 months. That's always a risk.
Yeah, I just remember a lot of going back and forth with appropriate attorneys involved on both sides. I think that may have cost us as much as 6 months on Riverfield, if memory serves.
That's correct estimation.
6 months is confirmed by the audience. All right?
All right, any further questions from the board? Dr. Tuttle,
Thank you.
any further comments from you or your team?
No, did you want to say something?
All right.
When do you expect to get it on as a voting item, would be a question.
I think we'll try and follow this timeline if that fits okay.
Right, so we would be expecting, to be specific about it, if the Board of Ed approves the ed specs and the initial funding request on January 12th, then we would be hoping to be on your agenda for January 27th.
Yeah, and we can talk a little bit about building committee members.
Yep.
What the discussion point is really finding a smaller group, 3 to 5 people, that would be available during the day. So it might be Board of Ed, superintendent staff, or staff here at Town Hall, so that folks are available. Not that we wouldn't expand it later, but in order to get through the initial design factor, that we do that with people that literally could meet during the day on
Right.
a regular basis, not, as Dr. Tittle mentioned, not the once a month in the evening format, so we can get through this quicker.
That's why we use the phrase day staff.
Yeah.
But again, that committee's up to you all and the RTM to decide. We're just suggesting that it be someone who can move a little faster.
And ideally, somebody who's got some building background as we're doing it, so
Some knowledge.
start thinking along the lines of any folks who might suggest, and Dr. Tittle and I will sit down and put our heads together on a few folks also. No further comments? No further comments here?
Thank you, Dr. Tittle.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for the time.
All right. Next item up, from the Director of Public Works. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Director of Public Works. Resolved that the Town of Fairfield enter into a municipal energy opportunity agreement with United Illuminating Company in the amount of $142,964.88 to cover the cost of replacing a rooftop heating and cooling unit at Fairfield Woods Library with a gas-fired unit, installing the first stage energy automated controls, and providing LED lighting throughout the building. And further resolved that the first selectman is hereby authorized on behalf of the town of Fairfield to execute the required documents in order to participate in the energy conservation program entitled Energy Opportunities. May I have a motion to accept?
We'll make a motion.
All right, a second?
I'll second that.
All right. The item is now before us. Mr. Bowman.
The Energy Opportunity is a program, we actually have 13 on the books right now. This will be the 14th one. But over the years, we probably had 25. So it's a combination of a grant and a loan, a zero-interest loan. And the loan is based on the payback of the savings. It can't be more than 4 years. So in this project, we have a $100,000 loan, and the rest is grant, which means you're going to have to count the savings over 4 years of the program. Basically, you know, the library is one of the oldest town buildings, starting in '69. It's the 5th largest consumer of electricity, with over 230,000 kilowatt hours annually, and it's the 4th largest demand user of electricity. It's open over 60 hours a week. Last year, it had almost 250,000 visitors, physically visiting. So it's a well-used building. So the age, size, hours of use, number of patrons, and electric demand and consumption make it a prime candidate for the energy conservation. You look at it, there are no temporary setbacks in the occupied zones now. There's no control in the use of outside air for economizers. The lighting is old and inefficient. At times, the existing system in certain areas is providing both heating and cooling at the same time with no ability to control it. So it's become very time-consuming cost to maintain and sustain normal heating and cooling in many areas of the building because of the ancient nature of what's there or the lack of what's there. So this seemed like a perfect project to go forward with.
So if I might, just to clarify how the cash flow works. Theoretically, there's no cash exchanging hands on this.
That's
There's
right.
a
What happens, UI actually pays the contractor directly, so the town never gets involved in the flow of money.
So there's a $42,000 grant, and because it's a grant, we don't have to pay it back.
Right.
Then there's $100,000 that is based on an estimate of how much we'll save.
Correct.
And lower energy costs over 4 years.
Both gas and electricity.
Okay. So who tracks if we make the $100,000 number? What happens if we save more than that? What happens if we save less?
Basically, we track it. If we save less, the actual payback is more. I mean, longer period of time. But the loan is over in 4 years, but and it may take us 5 years to recoup the cost rather than 4. If we do it quicker, we get it back quicker. But UI is out of it. They pay the money and then up front, and that's the end of their involvement. Then we track it from there.
Okay. Are we spending any town funds as part of this?
No.
All right.
My
So-
time, that's all. But basically,
Okay,
none.
so all the savings go directly from UI to the contractor?
Well, the cost goes directly to them. Yes. They get the loan and grant after it's constructed and after the first month's bill shows that they're actually achieving savings as projected. Then they get paid.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Who's the contractor who's going to be installing? the
Right now, we're
LEDs?
using Earth Core Energy Services. We used a number of them. He's been the most, going out and getting the grants for us, basically. And a number of people do it, but they've been far more successful. UI likes them, and they've been able to get us a lot of savings without any cost. And the other thing that's good with him is, he goes out and gets these projects, he spends his own money, designer. If he doesn't get the loan grant, he doesn't get paid.
Right.
So he's willing to take the roll of the dice on that, which a lot of these guys are not, so.
Who's our UI representative?
The other representative right now is Anita Cotton, and Antoinette Cotton. Just new.
Yeah.
Lori, did you have any follow-up questions?
No, good.
Any further ones? What's the timing on this, Ed?
Well, we had to approve it by December 31st, which is why I'm here. It's 2015 money. Next couple months we'll be back for new ones, but 2016 money. This would be done then sometime between February, March, April.
Okay, and again, from our approval process, because this isn't spending any town funds, this just goes before the Board of Selectmen, so that
Correct.
gets it approved now.
Yep.
Our vote to approve this gets us in before the end of the year, and that lets you meet...
Gets you the
deadline.
contract documents to sign. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, just wanted everybody to be clear on that.
Yep.
I think it looks pretty straightforward. What's your biggest concern about this? Any way this doesn't go right? What's the...
I don't, we've done so many of these projects. They've all worked, 80, 90%, or if not 100% of as advertised. Sometimes we're a little aggressive on the savings, but if it's an extra year, that's all right.
I think these are great projects. It gives the library an updated feeling. It costs the town very little. It ties into our current bill, so it's not, we don't feel it, and then we get the savings after 4 or 5 years permanently.
Yeah.
So it's a
It's a
win-win.
great program, really.
All right, it's, for purposes of form, any comments from the public? All right, not seeing any, back to the board. Any further comments, or are we ready to vote?
I think we're ready to vote.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Mr. Bowman, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, I think you both have gotten updated on the fact that the chairman of the Board of Assessment Appeals has asked for some additional support, given this is the first year after the reval, trying to anticipate some increase, we're not sure how much, but some increase in the number of appeals. We have no indication of how many that is, but there's still plenty of time for folks to do that. Given that, the additional members appointed on a temporary basis, I think it's about, Don, 4 months? Don, in fact, why don't you come to the podium, Don, so you can join us in discussion. The town has the ability to appoint additional members of the Board of Assessment Appeals with the RTM approval. The additional members are not subject to our approval, but we can nominate, or the chair of the Board of Assessment Appeals can nominate them. So it's not required we do anything. However, Mr. Hurley, who's chairman of the subcommittee on the RTM, who's dealing with this, asked us if we were going to nominate anybody. There's nobody that's come through my office as of yet, and I think the one person that did indicate some interest, we pointed directly at the Board of Assessment Appeals, because it's easier for the chair just to do that. We didn't have to meet or review that. So we don't have to do anything.
Okay.
But we just wanted to have that on the agenda so everybody's clear on how this works. So it's something that could come through our first meeting in January,
Right.
if we had some people on the agenda. Or frankly, any day of the calendar before then, we can just point them to the Board of Assessment Appeals chair, and she can nominate them directly.
Right.
The RTM is trying to get them in that first week in January, so that they can get them approved at the January RTM meeting, and they can be in place for March, which is when they have to meet. I think you should have gotten an email laying out some of the criteria in terms of people meeting during the day as opposed to at night, that type of thing.
Yeah, I saw that they have to be available, but is there any special training, or do they need to know, what do they need to know to be effective on this board?
The law doesn't have specific training spelled out
Right.
for Board of Appeal. However, the Connecticut Assessors Association has sessions which are going to be held Wednesday, January 6th, Norwalk City Hall, Thursday, January 21st, Bantam Borough Hall in Bantam, and January 27th, Farmington Town Hall in Farmington.
Yeah.
These are assessors that are instructing, they're 2.5-hour seminars.
Did you say you might do one here? Did I see that right somewhere that you
I said that
might-
I would do an Assessing 101
Okay,
type.
so not quite as in-depth as these other ones.
Pretty much. It would be as in-depth as I can go in a couple hours, yeah.
If I might, given those dates you just listed, could we make sure that Chair of the Board of Assessment Appeals has those, and perhaps Mr. Hurley, who's Chair of that RTM subcommittee?
Okay.
So they can make sure that any of the nominees, anybody who's being considered, has those dates, so they can attend those, because they will not be through the RTM approval process until I think it's January 25th. And I think most of those dates were before that, so they technically, if they wanted to go to those, they'd have to go while they were still nominees
Right.
before they were approved.
Mr. Hurley has a copy of the latest education offerings. I gave it to him on Monday night. I received this message on Monday, December 14th, so Mr. Hurley got it Monday.
You would just make sure he knows to hand those out, so he's not assuming somebody else did. Better they should get more than one than get none,
Okay,
because we do want to make sure they get a chance to attend these classes.
okay, and I will
Not to
be,
disparage yours as being any less, but we want to make sure they have all the dates, so it's most
Okay.
convenient for their schedule.
okay, so I will do a session in Town Hall,
Okay.
a couple hours, local, what happens in Fairfield, based on what you've learned in the seminars.
What's the, oh, I'm sorry.
Can you do that after the RTM approves them?
Yes,
Okay, so
Yes.
they would know that it would be in their, they'd know they're approved and know it'd be worth their time to attend. Sorry. Chris.
I was going to go, what's the process and the timeline for those at home who are watching who may want to appeal? When do they have to have their appeals in?
okay, the appeal deadline, the appeals have to be physically in the assessor's office by February 19th. Okay, and
February 19th.
February 19th, physically in the office, not postmarked, physically in the assessor's office on February 19th. And then the hearings are held during the month of March.
So with that, one of the questions of the board is just, do we definitely want to send any nominations along? We're not sure at this point. Or would be comfortable sending them on to the chair of the Board of Assessment Appeals so they can be.
So I think I'm going to be one of the people appealing. I got my.
That's different than what this is.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I don't, would I have to recuse myself from appointing somebody if I'm going to be going through the appeal process? or-
Technically, you're not going to appoint somebody.
Okay.
We're just going to send those on, and it might make sense for us not to send those on as a board. To send those on as the Board of Selectmen, we have to meet and we have to kind of agree/vote to send them on. That
Probably
doesn't get
makes-
them approved.
It probably makes sense to
Given your
just
statement,
send them like we
not
did
to.
with the last one.
Just point them to the Board of Assessment
Right.
Appeals chair.
Right.
Say like, here's the information if you want to get on, and so we're not involved. Good
Yeah,
question.
I think that's.
I think that makes sense.
So I'll let
go with that.
the RTM chair know that not to expect any from here, but we'll be sending ours to the chair of the Board of Assessment Appeals. Is that okay?
It's okay with me.
All right. Mr. Ross, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's see, next up, item 13 is from the tax collector to consider and act upon tax refund as recommended by the tax collector in the amount recommended. I have a motion to accept.
I'll make the motion.
A second?
I'll second it.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
I thought you said I'll second it.
Any amendments?
I'd like to make an amendment.
All right.
I'd like to make an amendment to remove the period at the end of the sentence and add a comma followed by $4,663.35.
Is there a second to the amendment?
I'll second it.
Any questions on the amendment? Any further discussion? All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the item as amended stands before us. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor of the item, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes unanimously. Last item, to hear, consider, and act upon any other business that shall properly come before this meeting. There's none that I know of. And lastly, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Before you adjourn, I'd like to make a couple comments, if I may.
Okay.
I want to thank everybody at the library for the Star Wars event. It was fantastic, and I understand that they gave out 1,600 lightsabers to kids. So for those of you at home who went to the event, it was fantastic, and I understand that that is a grant which the town won to utilize that. I went to the library last Saturday, and it was packed. And it was one of those feel-good things which the town does, which people with families with young kids really should take advantage of and go to that when they see those advertisements come in there. And we do that routinely at the library, so I'd like to do that. And second, I want to make sure everybody at home has a happy and safe holiday season this year.
And I certainly think we all concur with that. So, Mr. Timiak, thank you. Any further comments?
Nope, I'm all set.
All right. Have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
A second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.